Um, so any questions thus far about this exercise, this latest exercise? Okay, I'll run through it real quick, but first I'll just do some finishing off items and comments, and then if you've already got the exercise, feel free to check out whenever I've started to get into the run through of it. I will say I'm sorry that DRW could not host you guys. We were looking at some hosting graduation or something like that, but maybe sometime in the future we could do another cohort like that. But we really would have liked to do that. The next class is April the 1st, which I believe is next Wednesday. The syllabus is there's a link to it for session 2. It's really rough and in progress right now, but by the end of day Friday, it should be in good enough shape to really to represent what we'll cover. It's pretty much there now as far as the substance, but I'll spruce it up and get the handout ready like we had for this session as well. So yeah, I think Tom will be able to add me to the channel, or he has added me to the channel already for Kilo. So feel free to hit me up there if any questions or comments in the meantime or afterward. I may not respond right away just because I don't look at that channel live, but I'll check on it. Couple cleanup items before I jump into the exercise. Let me share this again. So at the end, I have this little section called Git versus GitHub. It's confusing because Git and GitHub, kind of operate in the same space. GitHub is built on Git, but it's not Git. And so the table that I put there kind of tries to distinguish between the two. The clone, commit, push, pull, merge, repo operations are all Git. GitHub is a wrapper around that, a social coding wrapper. So things like fork is a GitHub concept. You basically take an entire repo and create this network connection that only lives in GitHub and not Git itself. Pull request, same kind of thing. It's the giving back to the original repo, but with a mediator in place, basically. So you can't just push anything you want up to somebody else's repo. GitHub does have a notion of a repo, and it also has a notion of an org, which Git does not. So it's a two-level system inside of GitHub. The other thing GitHub adds is the notion of kind of access to the repo in terms of teams, collaborators, and org owners. None of that is a Git concept. So for what that's worth, it should help you navigate the space. So anything else? We've mostly covered this repo graph, but just for completeness sake, let's make sure we've got a good handle on what it's doing. So we've talked about head and branches, which is referenced up here. We've referenced these SHAs, which are all, in this case, commit SHAs. There's no trees or blobs shown here, just commits. The comments, of course, off to the side in the format that we're using, this ADOG format. And then these lines can be a little intimidating because it doesn't order perhaps in the way you might expect it in some cases. I think this format basically takes the latest commit and shows it first no matter where it comes from. So sometimes your master will be at the top, but then if you make a commit to something that was way down here, then it will show up, and the whole graph will sort of change around, even though it represents the same thing. Visually, it'll look substantially different. So the stars correspond to commits, and their horizontal position corresponds to which branch, which line of changes they're on. So, for instance, 759 is on, this far left line. It's not actually on this pink line because the star is over here. So, here you got a branch coming off of 759, and you can follow it all the way up to the head, and you can see that's the GH Pages branch. This is where I basically have put all my syllabus and handout and everything on this GH Pages, which also happens to be a feature of GitHub. You can put it on the specific branch and push it up, and it'll put it on your, it'll compile it into Markdown and put it there as a web page or a website. But for our purposes, you can trace kind of where it came from and where it is by following the stars and the lines. So, any questions on that? I think it's, but we've used it enough today that it should be fairly straightforward by this point. But you have to kind of trace where things are going in there to see which commit each or which branch each commit falls on. So, okay, so yeah, if you want to drop off or check out, that's fine. I'm going to go through this exercise here just real quick, starting with this moving a change forward, and call it a day after that. So here we are, top of the repo. We have a directory called a directory, and we go down in there and put some stuff in a file. I'll just do it this way so I don't have to break into Vim. So avoided it all day so far. We don't already have that there. Yes, we do actually. What's there? Let me see what's already there. Okay. So yeah, I'll just clobber that. Okay. There's that. What do we want to do? Look at the status. Okay. So this is in the workspace, our local file system that represents our Git repo, plus any changes, but that's the only place it is. So as we said before, we can do a Git Add. And we can say the file name, or we can just say dot for the current directory. And that will add everything that's here and anywhere else from here on down. Let's see what the status is. So now it's in both our workspace and it's in our index, this change is. So I haven't covered Git Diff, but I should have. So Git Diff by itself looks at the workspace versus the index, which since we've done a Git Add, there are no differences now. But you can do a Git Diff staged, and now it looks at the differences between the index and head, which there are. I do this so often that I have GD and GDS aliased, so I can make sure that I'm committing what I think I'm committing. And then finally, we can put it on in. We'll see what our head is first. wonder if we didn't give it an option, if it would know. Nope, it wouldn't. You have to tell it which one we want to parse. Okay, so that's what it is. We commit it. So, and with the status again, now we're all committed. Happened to be on some new branch, but that's okay. So now the trees that have the change are all three trees. You know, we changed the workspace with making the file different. We changed the index by adding it, and then we brought the repo itself up to date by committing it and pushing it on forward through those three trees. So let's go the other way. So we got our head. I'm just up arrowing, by the way, when I do this. Up and down arrow. Get at it, the previous command. So our head changed, of course, because we did a commit. Now if we do a git reset, it's going to be the same as doing a git reset -- mixed head, which is basically going to do nothing. You know, we can verify that by looking at our head, because we're just setting it to the same thing that it was before, so nothing changes. Nothing changes in git status. So now, let's move it back. And we're just going to move it back a little bit softly, which will only change what head points to. And as I referenced briefly, there's a git revision syntax we could use with the caret at the end that says point to the thing before head, and resolve the SHA, resolve to that SHA. I'll just pause a minute here. So if we follow our graph back to the next star, that's going to be this guy. We could also just use that guy explicitly. Anything that would give us that SHA, ultimately, we could use. If we're going to go back to FC223, we could use origin/master, because that's going to be the same thing. Use origin/head, which wouldn't be really logical, but it would amount to the same thing if we were going back here. Whatever resolves to the SHA you want, you can use there, in short. So git reset would be -- soft head carets, thing before head. Okay. So that's easier than kind of trying to remember what head was before. So now, what's changed? Because we did soft, only the thing head pointed to changed. And that leaves the index the same, which now shows as modified with respect to head. We can also see that with Git Diff and Git Diff-staged. Git Diff is only with respect to the index in the workspace, which we didn't change, so that shows nothing. -staged shows with respect to head and the index, which did change. So that's why we get a difference there. And so if we look closely, we can see what's being compared, which two SHAs are being compared. So there is actually an index SHA. As I mentioned, some of the index components are already hashed into the Git database right before being committed. That's why you see stuff like that. Okay, so that's soft. Head. Indeed, it is different than it was before. Status we looked at. So okay, now the commit that we were on before doing a Git, I mentioned before that just because we go away from a commit, just because it doesn't maybe show up on ADOG, doesn't mean that it's not there anymore. So that previous commit is still there. We could reset hard back to it if we wanted to. It's still there. We can fix our fix our mistaken reset if we have to. It turns out we did something wrong. So now if we do a git reset, will something happen or not? Right, here's where we're at. Do git reset. Do a git status. So we did a git reset before, nothing happened, but now we're at a different state. We're actually, not all of the trees are aligned in this in these circumstances. So a git reset has a different effect than it would if all the trees were aligned. So recall that a git reset is the same as doing a -- mixed, which means that head and the index get changed. So previously only the head was changed. Now that we've done a git reset mixed, the index got changed as well, and now the only thing that's not changed is our workspace. So we basically, unadded the file is kind of the way to think of it, compared to where it was before when it was uncommitted but added already. So now our Git Diff staged shows nothing because head and index are the same, but Git Diff now does show something because index and workspace are different with respect to each other. So again, the only thing that hasn't changed was the workspace, and now it shows as modified, just like it was when we first made that change to the file by putting this word in here. So the man page for Git reset says that it's the opposite of Git Add. And so you can understand that by thinking about, how, Git Add goes in a different direction than Git reset. And also by the Git reset is mixed by default, which, changes everything it sets everything to its reference point except the workspace. So I think that's about it. I guess the one last comment, when would each variation of git reset come in handy? So we talked about one where if you change your mind about what you wanted to include, you could pull things out with a soft back in, kind of, revert things so they were still in the index but not committed. If you wanted to just throw away the commit entirely, you could do a reset hard, which would change everything back to the previous commit, and just be as if you had not changed or committed anything. Sometimes that's handy. I'm going to stop there because I know I told some people they could check out if they didn't want to go through this exercise. That's all I got today. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and see you next Wednesday.